Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of 5 Drinks for Midnight. Another show we bring the questions, guests bring the drinks. We try to wrap up before midnight. Today we're headed to downtown Brooklyn, the Clover Club, to talk to the man, the myth, the legend himself, DeGroff, King Cocktail. But before we do, like and subscribe. It would really help us out. Let's get started. Join us, 5 Drinks for Midnight, 5 Drinks for Midnight, whatever comes
We're starting light. Hope you don't mind.
Oh no, we're
That's just as much a part of my life in the bar as is every cocktail I've ever made.
Excellent. So cheers.
Cheers, Tim.
Thank you. So what kind of beer are we drinking?
I wanted to taste two different beers. That's the Brooklyn Lager.
Okay.
Local. The Pilsner is a new one for me. I'm not sure where it came off the draft, but I'm a big Urquell fan. This is a new Pilsner I haven't tasted yet, and it's pretty good.
Excellent. Well, that's damn good too. Gotta keep it local.
Yeah, no. Garrett Oliver is a master brewer.
Well, let's get right into question one then. Since we already know what we're drinking, how do you go from wanting to be an actor to becoming the king of cocktails?
When I went to New York in 1978, I'm sorry, 1969, and LA in 1978. In New York, I had gone to New York, visiting New York. I had dreamed about New York. I saw West Side Story when I was like 14 years old. Dreamed about being there, dreamed about being a jet, purple shirt, thin black tie, New York. What it must be like. I dreamed about New York, and when I was in the university, we entered a play into the Yale Drama Festival, and the Brendan Gill, who was the hot shit New Yorker drama critic of that day, who was in the late 80s, mid 80s, attended the Yale Drama Festival and quipped in a small paragraph in print, on the road, kind of stuff. Best thing at the Yale Drama Festival was a little piece from University of Rhode Island called Home Free by Lanford Wilson, a surprising young playwright who's now coming on to go back. And I went right back to my dormitory room. I packed my bags, jumped on a train in the middle of my junior year, and never looked back. Checked into the YMCA and started looking for work. And I found a job at Howard Johnson's. It said dishwasher, and I just walked in. The one right in Times Square, the flagship, it just closed not too long ago. And I went in, said, I see you're looking, the manager's in the back. So I went to the back and I see you're looking for a hire in here. And he says, no. I said, well, you got it signed, dishwasher. He says, yeah, but you speak English. I'm like a babe in the woods, I'm going like, does that mean I can't get the job? No, that's not what that means, pal. You can have the job if you want it. So I took the job. Fast forward many, many years. I'm a bartender. I'm working for Joe Pond at the Rainbow Room. I've got a certain reputation. Jacques Pepin, the chef? Well, Jacques Pepin had a wonderful show of his own. He also had a show with Julia Child when he was a younger man. He's in his 80s now. And Jacques and his daughter had a show for a while. And I would run into his daughter and his once in a while. And one time I ran into her, and she said, my dad's signing his new book. Have you ever met my dad? And I said, I'd love to meet you. So I go over, and there's a break in the action. And she says, Dad, this is from the Rainbow Room, And he had worked with Joe Pond. Joe Pond is an assistant. Joe Pond, you're a famous cocktail guy, huh? And I said, well, actually, to tell you the truth, Jacques, I started at Howard Johnson's. He says, I do start at this Howard Johnson's. Right here? And you mean by your time? He says, yes. I said, come on, Howard. You're not kidding. You really? He said, don't you know they take me to when they make the hotels? I create the dishes for the hotels, the fried clam, all these dishes. right in this place in Times Square. Howard Jones. I said, my God, we were colleagues, Jacques. You were inventing the dishes and I was washing them. Anyway, that's exactly what I did. I worked as a dishwasher, I worked as a waiter, I worked putting up posters around town, I worked as a movie man for a company that would get a lot of work because they were the only ones that wanted 5 flights at one end and 4 at the other. Massively over Van Gogh movers, if you can believe the name. Later on, when he made a lot of money, he had 2 moving men painted on the side of their trucks holding a giant ear. I'm not kidding. He had a sense of humor. Doug French, he was quite the guy. Anyway, after a series of crazy jobs, one of them being a waiter in Charlie O's in Rockefeller Center, the original Charlie O's opened by Joe Bond. Now, Joe Bond became my mentor and my boss much later in my career, but I had met Joe when I had another wacky job working for in the mailroom at an advertising agency, 745 Fifth Avenue, the Squibb building, great old headquarters. This agency was Lois, Holland, and Calloway. Ron Holland, one of the partners, the copywriter, was my best friend's older brother. So I'm sure that when I arrived in New York in 1969, and Jerry joined me later, we were roommates up on the west side, and his mother, Alice, I had known him since grade school, called him and said, Ronnie, you give those boys a job. Right? So Ron calls out, get over here, you know. And he puts me in the mailroom and puts Jerry making shelves in another part of the agency, right? So I'm going through all the old, again, not much to do, and there's files, and I'm looking at all these old menus from restaurant associates because the agency that these guys came from was a really famous agency called Papert, Candy, and Rose. Fred Papert, the guy that redid Times Square, Julian Candy, the most famous ad copywriter ever. We're still using that Greasy Kid stuff. Alka-Seltzer, he did all the original Alka-Seltzer, all the original Volkswagen, created the name of the Beatle, all that stuff. Really smart guy. Ron was his protege. Papert, Candy, and George Lois, really famous art director. George Lois and young Ron Holland and a business guy named Jim Calloway split off from the agency, taking with them the Restaurant Associates account, which was big. These were the best restaurants in this, in the city at the time. And if you're in the ad business, what do? You entertain clients. So they had a trade-out deal to entertain clients in the hottest restaurants in town at the time. And it was all sign the check kind of a deal. They made it. And that's how I met Joe. Because we were family, we got in on client dinners, and we were eating meals in the Four Seasons in the Secret Building, the Forum of the 12 Caesars in Rockefeller Center, in La Fonda del Sol, in the Diamond Life Building. We were eating in places where the dinner was more than our rent. You know what I'm saying? Yep. So I got an early on education between the dining out with Ron and watching how he treated the waiters, the bartenders, how he ordered all that stuff, plus going through the files in the mailroom. I got an education. And it wasn't until years later I really understood the significance of the fact that I'm looking at a menu for a new restaurant in the brand new Time Life building that opened in 1960 called La Fonda del Sol, which is a celebration of the foods of Central America, South America, and Mexico. And it's got pisco sours on it. This is 1960. It's got 3 mezcal drinks and 2 tequila drinks, including the margarita. In 1960, Joe had to import those 3 spirits for that restaurant. This guy was way out front. Four Seasons opened in 1959 in the Seagram's building. A seasonally changing menu 4 times a year. His consultant on the menu was James Beard. Throughout his whole career, until James died in '87, he consulted with Joe on the menu. They both shared a vision of a new American cuisine. Joe did not like the idea that all the 4-star, 3-star, 2-star restaurants were French or Italian. That seems like it's not right. So he just worked at the idea that there really is an American cuisine, and we're going to discover it. He was one of the winners of the world. So many amazing theme restaurants. A lot of young people. Alice Waters, who went to France as from Berkeley as an overseas studies student, starts eating like the French does by going to the market in the morning and coming back and cooking and going to the market the next morning, and fell in love with this idea. Market at the table. That's how they lived over there. So she comes to Berkeley, California. She opens Chez Panisse, one of the most famous market to table restaurants ever, in 1971. But she said that it was Joe's Four Seasons reading about that in the Seegers building that gave her the idea that she could do it out there and make that big step. And decide to rent that space, create a restaurant, and did the same thing. She's hugely changed. Now she has her own farms, her own cattle and sheep. It's incredible. So a lot of people were influenced by Joe. Joe opened Windows on the World back in 1976. He hired a guy from New Paltz, New York, named Kevin Zraly. Kevin Zraly was just a good-natured guy who knew a lot about wine. And he worked at a small restaurant. Joe brought him in. Liked his attitude. Because in that era, in the big French restaurants, they had a Testament hanging by a gold chain and they had epaulets on them. And we walk up to the table. I don't think these people are going to have wine. But that kind of really snobby service. And Joe hated it. He wanted to sell wine in a lot of it. So we hired this guy. We walk up to the table and go, let's have some wine. What do you like? Like white Zinfandel. Have I got a wine for you? It comes from Provence. Same color as white Zinfandel. Not too far off in price. You're really going to like this wine. Didn't sell him a bottle of Provence Rosé. He wanted to sell it, period. And he didn't make you feel embarrassed if you couldn't pronounce it. You would pronounce it for you could anticipate, say, you could see that they might have, and he was just delightful guy. He wrote the Windows of the World wine book, which has sold more than any wine book in history. And he also taught the Windows of the World wine course to thousands upon thousands of executives who needed to know about wine. Brilliant guy. Still around. Joe, inspired by Joe wanted that. Joe hired me at the Rainbow. He didn't hire me there first. He hired me in a little fine dining French restaurant, believe it or not, with a 2-star Michelin chef named Gerard Fango at 49th Street, Madison Avenue. Gerard was a brilliant chef. He was a bit of a pain when he was drinking, but he was a brilliant chef. And I'm making, Joe, when he hired me, said, I want classic American cocktails from the golden age of the cocktail back in the late 19th century. There's a book by Terry Thomas. I want you to find that and look in there and see what I mean and give you some ideas. He didn't tell me it was written in 1862, so I'm going to Doubleday on Fifth Avenue looking for this book, right? So anyway, I found it. Joe's partner, Michael White, helped me find that book and some other ones. Started working on this menu. Wasn't quite sure why. We got a big bucket at the front of the bar with champagne bottles in it. And I'm not sure why we're doing this 19th century, these old cocktail revival. Then one day Benny Goodman sits at my bar. Finally I go to Ray Wellington, the wine guy there. It was my first interview to get the job. I said, Ray, what's going on? Joe's sitting over here, Dale Chillicothe, the famous glass night. He's got Milton Glaser coming in, the graphic artist. He's got all these artists and architects, and now Benny Goodman is there waiting to see Joe. What the hell's going on? He said, is that Rainbow Room thing? I said, Rainbow Room? What Rainbow Room? We're 6 months in. Joe was apparently in the first year of the 2-year restoration of the Rainbow Room. Nobody told me that. So it suddenly occurred to me, drinks with tradition, dishes that opened in the 30s. He's going to do dishes with, I'm the guy. I'm doing the research. I'm making the cocktails for the Rainbow Room here at this little French fine dining restaurant. I want this gig. I go to Joe, and I said, what if we were to make a menu with drinks from some of the great supper clubs in the shadow of 30 Rock? One of the tallest buildings in Midtown in that era. And I said, the Store Club, colonies. I like the idea, make a menu show. So I worked with Michael White as a taster, and Roseanne Gould was Michael's wife and a chef who was actually in the Koch administration, the Gracie Manson chef. But she created for the Rainbow Room the little meals menu, which became quite famous in a bird cage on small tables like this on the wall. You know,
Okay.
with drinks. And so she actually did a Little Meals cookbook, which was very successful also. And anyways, she and Michael tasted the drinks as I worked on it. And these are drinks that haven't been made for some of them since the 19th century. So I showed the menu to Joe and tasted some of the drinks. I said, I like it. But you got to meet Alan Lewis if you want to get the game. And Alan Lewis was going to manage the Rainbow, the real thing. So I go down to Joe Beyond Michael White and Company down right across from the Flatiron Building. Joe was on the 5th floor of another sort of good-looking building in that neighborhood. And there's Alan. Cardigan sweater, feet up on the desk, eyes closed. And as soon as my butt hit the chair, he says, "So kid, what do you need to live on?" What do you need to live on? I got to come up with a figure. I haven't said hello yet. So, Jesus, I threw a figure out, and of course, the second I threw it out to him, I'm going, asshole, oh my God, so low, and my mother, and I'm talking, and we're talking, and then I'm out of the office, and I'm on the street. And I'm like, what just happened? What the hell? This is too important. This is wrong. I went to the phone booth. There were phone booths in those days, the kind you could open and walk in. And I called him right back. And the secretary going through, and I said, Mr. Lewis, this day I was just in your office. Yeah, what do you want? I said, you know what? You caught me by surprise with that question about the figure, and I have to tell you that figure, you asshole, you're going to make 3 times that. Click. Yeah, that'll work.
Yeah, there you go. Done.
Where are those bosses today? I don't think they'll ever make it through the HR department.
Never.
Alan was quite the character, I gotta tell you. There are many, many stories about him running windows on the world, which you couldn't get in for the first 6 months. The wait for reservations was 6 months. Unbelievable. Yeah. Now this is Strange Brew. It's not my drink. It's by a guy named Phil Ward. It's a beer drink. I thought we'd go from beer to a beer drink.
Okay.
You know what a Tom Collins is?
Yes.
This is made with Tanqueray 10. It's got sweetened by something called John D. Taylor Velvet Valerian, which is a syrup from Barbados, almond milk-looking syrup that's in the Mai Tai. Okay. Lots of other famous drinks. That's his sweetener. Lemon juice is the sour. Tom Collins would normally be topped up with soda. He topped it up with a very hoppy IPA.
All right. Well, cheers.
And it's one of the best drinks I've ever tasted. It's in my new crafting cocktail, one with a little round syrup.
Okay.
Not bad, eh?
That's damn good.
I have a contract
Especially
with
on-
Holland America to make cocktail menus for them and train them staff. And I take them through tastings of the drinks that I create for the menu. I wanted to do a menu that featured young craft cocktail bartenders. All those, it's Holland America, so they have an older crowd. They don't have any go-karts or water slides. They have great restaurants and great bars. It's like Cunard, you know. They're all owned, Cunard and Holland America, and several are owned by the Carnival, I think it is. They own several. And this brand, they were interested in me because I'm a classicist. I work at the Rain Room and I made classic cocktails. So they wanted that at their bars. I wanted to introduce a lot of these classic cocktail drinkers to young bartenders who were taking those classics like the Tom Collins and doing really strange and interesting variations on them, hence the Strange Brew. But this one, and I gave them credit on the menu. And I said, you know, Strange Brew by Phil Wood, craft bartender in New York City. This is one hell. And every one of the waiters who tasted it, of all the drinks I put on the menu,
This is damn
this is
good.
the one that caught their attention.
Especially on a day like today, this is just so damn good.
It's a lovely drink. So anyway, we were talking about, what the hell were we?
Well, I got a question 2 for you.
Right.
So, what do you think Joe Baum would think about the cocktail era that exists now?
We love it. It's extraordinarily culinary driven, number one. It has a vision behind it. It's raised the level of professionalism of the bartender beyond even what it was in the golden age in the 1880s. These bartenders are much more well educated than bartenders have ever been. Much of that education is through the internet and self-taught, reading, exploring the internet internationally, what's going on in the part of the world. They're noticing what happened in the culinary revolution, which spanned the last 3 decades of the 20th century, where suddenly Americans fell in love with big flavor and regional and seasonal, and most importantly, cuisines from around the world all started to become really popular. You know, the Vietnam War brought the Vietnamese and the Thai cooks over here. I mean, Tex-Mex started to be mixed in with Cajun, and the spices and the techniques of the Chinese cooks were being applied to French technique and French ingredients. You know, you had things like noodle, where you had a mishmash of French sauces and the Chinese all in one, you know, and fusion cuisine. And so what you ended up with by the end of the 20th century was a huge audience of people who love the big flavor and are willing to take chances. So these guys on the craft cocktail movement, and by the way, those were the people that went to the bar and ordered a margarita. The guy went over and pushed a button, and this green neon little stuff came out of the button. And they said, hey, what happened to those little green globes called limes? I like my margarita made with a lime. Well, whatever that is. You know, so people became demanding. The people in the industry responded. Not only that, liquor companies for the first time ever saw the cocktail exploding again, starting with the Cosmopolitan and drinks like that. Really, that led the way. Why? Because women drank it, and women loved cocktails. And when women would go to a bar, so they'd get the cocktail menu, and they'd get their men to order the cocktail too, so they could taste 2 cocktails. And women were driving that growing cocktail enthusiasm. So when the culinary world banged into the cocktail, you got the craft cocktail. We had a ready-made audience willing to try these drinks that were basils and strawberries mashed up together with syrup from the Caribbean and maybe some simple syrup flavored with black pepper, or maybe, you know, Thai basil and drinks to go with that food and no food. You know what I mean? The food got different, so the drinks needed to get different. I mean, people were actually using drinks with food instead of wine in some cases, especially in Pacific Rim ingredient restaurants, where some of these drinks were more appropriate than wine was to the spiciness of the food. Where did we first have our drinks and food together? In Mexican restaurants. Why? Because the Mexican food was spicy and the margaritas were sweet. The spice and the sweet, the hot and the sweet. The Chinese figured that out 1,000 years ago. You know, hot and sour. You know, they understood the idea of mixing, because the sweet and the hot go to the same receptors in your mouth. So if you got something really hot, you take something really sweet. Oh, good. You know. Or if you got something really sour, you take something fried. And then the fried, and then the sour cleans the palate, and then the fried, and then the sour cleans the oil. And it's a natural, you know. So you started having all these food, small bites, and cocktails. It was a new game plan in the restaurant business. You didn't need a big kitchen. This is one right here. Susan and Julie. What they've done here, they have a little kitchen downstairs. No big fancy chef, not a bunch of fancy waiters, no tableside flaming, whatever, like the French restaurants. What they have is some really good small bites that are perfect for the really good cocktails that they're serving. You know, this small bites and cocktails, think of the money you save by not having to build that kitchen. Think of the money you save by not having a $75,000 chef and a whole bunch of well-trained waiters. You know, not that these waiters are not well-trained, but they're not. They're serving cocktails and they're serving food, so you can use fewer waiters for a larger number of people. And your kitchen costs in terms of help are low. lower. You know, you can get a couple of cooks where once you had a head chef, a saucier, a garde manger, you know, blah, blah, blah. Now you got two guys down there cranking the food out, and it's really smart, and it's really made careers for a lot of young bartenders.
Awesome. Is there a drink that you served Joe that you never wanted to taste from you ever again?
Well, Joe was funny. He would say, "Make me a Bloody Mary." And he did this a lot. Joe, I wasn't the only bartender who did this. Make me a margarita. Oh, make me a. One day he said, "Make me a." Here's a good example. Make me a Bloody Bull. Now, Bloody Bull is when you mix tomato juice and beef consomme together with the vodka and the spice. Shake it up. You don't normally shake Bloody Marys. You roll Bloody Marys because tomato juice will get foamy. Really a lot of foam. It sort of destroys the weight on the tongue. It turns it into foam. So you don't shake Bloody Marys, you pour them back. Still get a nice connection when you pour them back. And the weight of the liquid on the tongue remains the same. But when you add the beef broth to it, you can shake it. Because the beef broth keeps the liquid instead of turning it into foam. And you get this fun little sort of Guinness-like head on top from the beef, you know. And I made one for Joe. And I squeezed the lemon. Like you would with a lemon, like you would with a milk. So something wrong. And he walked away. So that's what Joe was like. That was your cue to fix it and make it right. So I'm going like, oh my God. Make it taste, and like, what the hell? Then one day I'm sitting in a Chinese restaurant with my wife, and I open the thing, and there it is. Beef with orange. So when Joe came the next time, dash of orange. Twist of orange. No lemon, no lime. Okay. Keep it like that. Walk away. Problem solved. You know, that's Joe. Gives you a job, do it. If it's wrong, fix it. Doesn't give you any more information. He didn't tell me that How to Mix Drinks by Jerry Thomas was written in 1862. He just said, find it, read it. Yep. You know. And if you couldn't do those things, Joe wouldn't really fire you. He hated firing people. He hated that confrontational thing. He'd just make it like so miserable for you. Quit.
On to drink 3 questions.
This is my drink in this case. This guy works at a bar, and we used to do drinks a la minute for people sometimes. It became a thing, and it sort of had once you start doing that. So I'm kind of busy, and he walks up and he says, "Hey there, I built a bar up by the pool, and I know it's kind of crazy, but I want a whiskey drink for the summer by the pool." I said, "Really, whiskey? Okay, let me think about it." So there's a drink called a whiskey stone sour. The stone is used to describe a whiskey sour that's made with lemon juice and orange juice. Probably came from California. Well, I thought about it for a while. I said, I'm going to make him a Hawaiian stone sour. Take the orange out, put the pineapple in, okay, and my bitters. Now, I didn't have my bitters back then. I added that later. So have a taste. My bitters is made with allspice berries, green anise, and I can't really tell you everything because my partner will kill me.
Oh, it's damn good. Cheers.
So, what we have here is a whiskey sour made with bonded whiskey, which means it's 100 proof.
Yeah.
At least 4 years old. And you can have a summer whiskey cocktail on this.
That is amazing. That is so good. Oh.
That's both.
All right. Question 3 then. What makes a good mixologist? The term that you coined.
It's like the question, what makes a great bar.
Yeah, well, that
You know, um,
is it the bar? Is it the menu? Is it the people? Like, I know.
all of the above, but none of that is anywhere near as important as the most important. I mean, in the restaurant business, there's two contracts. One is at a table when you sit down to have, you're essentially renting a little bit of real estate when you go to a table in a restaurant, right? You know, for an hour or two, whatever. You're gonna do business, maybe make love, maybe have ID. You know, the waiter is really, for all intents and purposes, an interloper. This is private property. He's coming into your space, so he's got to get in and he's got to get out. But he's got to get in when you need him. So if you need him, he should be there. So he should be watching. That's the contract of this private property. That's public property. Every one of those schools is public access. You can sit down without any invitation, without any reservation. So you sit at that bar, and the guy who curates that space is standing behind. And if that guy is really, really good at his job, those stools are full all the time. If he's not so good at his job, he makes people uncomfortable. Even a guy whose drinks are not super duper, if he's a wonderful character, people will go for him. People go to bartenders, they don't go to bars. They go to famous bars like Elaine's and 21 Club. But the regular bars around town, there's thousands of them. They go where that guy makes them feel good. You know, Doug Quinn is one of those bartenders. He was at P.J. Clark's for a lot of years, and then he opened his own place, Hudson and Malone, around the corner. Doug sees you at the door, Dale. And when you get to the bar, there's your Glenlivet on the rocks. If you don't want your Glenlivet on the rocks, when he sees you at the door, you got to go, a pint. And he knows I don't want Guinness, right? Because if I don't tell him that, you got it. When I sit at the bar, he's busy. Those places are both packed all the time. You know what PJ Clark's is like a cocktail hour? You know, it's 5 deep, and there's people crowded around the bar. So while he's tearing all around the bar, he goes, oh yeah, meet Phil, ex-cop, and he's off on the run. Phil, Dale, Rainbow Room, best bartender ever, and he's over here now. So the next time he comes by, he goes, hey, and this guy over here, Phil, Dale, meet so-and-so, he just came in, you know, he's, and now we all know each other, you know. That's him. He does that on the fly, while he's making drinks and while he's carrying on other conversations. So what does the bartender do? He decides how to make you happy within 30 seconds. Make sure that everybody knows everything. Figures out what will make you happy. He's different for a lot of different people, and he can do that because he's confident in himself. That he's confident enough to be different with different people. You know, it's a really complicated job where you are multitasking all the fucking time. You know, that's all you do is multitask all day long. And it can be nerve-wracking and it can be difficult. And as Joe would say, unless you own your own bar, you can do whatever the hell you want. You own your own bar. But when you are working, there's someone else. Your job, as described by Joe Baum, my boss, the first time I ever spoke to him, in the first interview when he said, I want a 19th century cocktail bar program over here. And by the way, Dale, I want you to tell the story. Now, Joe was talking about the stories that Ron Hollins and all the other guys around those restaurants that Joe created. He knew I knew those stories by heart. And he wanted to hear them across the bar once in a while. And he ended by saying, you know what your job is, Dale? Make friends out of difficult people. And he walked away. And every once in a while, he'd bring a guy up and deliver it to me. And I knew the guy was a pant load. And I was supposed to make him. But every once in a while, you couldn't. People were just too miserable to be able to have a good time. And there was once in a while when Joe would walk up and he'd say, you know, I really don't think this is the right bar for Phil. In other words, let's get him out of here. Yeah. He's disruptive and not that good. And I didn't have to throw very many people out. I threw people out for one of two reasons. He wouldn't stop drinking when I told him to. They got by. You know, you can't get by.
Yeah.
Can't show a weapon. Can't threaten anyone. Then this real estate is no longer pleasant.
Yeah.
No longer want to be there.
Don't want to be in that type of neighborhood. No, and that's what I was looking for. Because again, I'm a firm believer that it doesn't matter what type of bar you are. Like, have the people come for the bartender. The bartender makes the people. And again, to a bartender, you're so many things. Like you said, like you're like a real estate agent. You're a matchmaker. You're a people connector.
You got to read
you're
the
a
sports
doctor.
page.
Yeah.
You got to know where the best restaurants are in the neighborhood. You got to know where you can dance late at night. Where do I go when you close? You got to know shit. You know.
Yeah. Best advice I ever got when I first moved to New York was find a local bar and make it yours, like that, so that they know who you are. And again, that is. Fortunately, my local bar is nowhere near here, but it's just.
I got one in every neighborhood.
Yeah, there you go.
You have to curate your local bar.
Yeah. But, yeah.
You know how you curate a local bar? You go in, you keep your mouth shut, listen, order again, and tip large and walk out.
Yep.
Next time you come in, there's going to be a smile. If it's any kind of a decent bartender,
Yeah, they'll remember it.
you know, oh yeah. If you're a good tipper, next time you come in, it's going to be, hey, I haven't seen you. You were in before, right? Yeah. It was. I think you were drinking a Guinness, right? Yeah.
Awesome. I think that's amazing. Well, cheers to you, sir. This is amazing. This is fucking amazing cocktail.
Created the Ritz cocktail with champagne, so that we have something to serve at the bar, and it was really popular. I put it on the menu, regular menu, and I never stopped making it. You can drink it any time of day or night, before dinner, after dinner, during dinner. And it's called the Ritz cocktail in honor of Cesar Ritz at the Ritz Hotel.
Excellent.
Because he had a Ritz cocktail, which was champagne based. This is cognac, champagne, Cointreau, maraschino liqueur, orange oil, top of champagne.
Very nice.
This is the killer dealer. So
Yeah, that is.
What was the end of
That is.
Do you think drinking champagne can make you crazy?
Cognac and champagne.
Yeah.
There you go. Excellent. Well, that brings us into question 4. We're almost wrapping up. It's almost midnight. Not even close because the sun's still up. But what do you think the next modern cocktail is?
All right, so let's say you're in a restaurant in the late 19th century in Paris. The chef comes to the table. Maybe 100 years before, a young chef came up with a brilliant idea of having some basic sauces. They call them mother sauces. Mother sauces became a thing in French cooking. From those mother sauces, thousands and thousands of sauces were created by chefs, eventually all around the world. Even the Chinese guys ended up with a brown sauce and a white sauce. Holidays and red sauce. So they Espanoles were brown sauce. So they came up with wonderful recipes. So if you were to walk in at the end of the 19th century and say to a chef, what's the next grape sauce? He'd laugh. Because they're coming out a mile a minute all around France, all around the world. The sauces are emerging. Now here we are in the middle of the craft cocktail movement. What's the next big deal? There's so much creativity in the industry right now. We have our mother sauces in our business. The tall drink like the strange brew. That's sour, essentially. You know, you can take that sour and play games with it, like he did with the collards, like people do with a whiskey sour, me, just now, like people do with a margarita, which is a sour, a little float of mezcal on top. It changes the character of it totally. You know. Then we have our strong stir drink, Martini Manhattan. Then we have the old fashioned, which is a category of its own. It's the definition of the cocktail, 1806. Balanced in Colombian repository newspaper, strong spirits of any kind, sugar, water, and bitters. That's 8. basic recipe, a mother recipe. Just plug in different ingredients. You can have a Oaxacan old fashioned. You can have a gin old fashioned. You can have a new fashioned made with vodka. As long as you got the bitter ingredient, you got the sweet ingredient, you got the strong ingredient, you got, and certain your tall drinks like your highballs. What can you do with a highball? You can make a vodka orange juice and put a float of Galliano. Now you got another drink. You know, it's endless what you can do now. Liquor companies have responded to all this creativity. When Prohibition ended, there were 1,500 spirits available in the market as the market was reopened. Lots of stuff never made it through Prohibition. Today, there are 6,000 gins alone. In this country, since the beginning of this millennium, thousands and thousands of new products have come into the market. There are over 3,000 artisan distillers in America today. 10 years ago, there were 6. It's an embarrassment of riches. You know?
Absolutely. Is there something that you're drinking right now that you're really keen on? Well, yeah.
It's yes, there is. I'm a martini drinker. I told you that. Someone would ask me how I like martinis. I'd say beefeater, dry, olive, and twist. No, a lot of shit has happened since beefeater, dry, olive, and twist. 20 years has happened, and in those 20 years, Audrey Saunders opened Penguin Club downtown. Closed. What did she do? She reintroduced something called the Fitty Fitty Martini. The martini was born in 1888, when it first appeared in a book by Harry Johnson with the title Martini Cocktail. It had 5 ingredients. 2 of those ingredients were equal parts gin and vermouth. There was gum syrup, there was bitters, there was other ingredients in the martini ingredient. But for the first 20 and up until Prohibition, the martini was equal parts of gin and vermouth. Almost every one. Sometimes it was Old Tom gin and sweet vermouth. Sometimes it was dry vermouth and London dry gin. There were, lots of different variations on the thing. As the century ended, it got dry. As the new century began, it got drier even yet. It wasn't until post-Prohibition that 3-to-1 hit the market. 3-to-1. 3 parts gin, 1 heart. So that's the Nicanora martini, the Thin Man movies, those little tiny glasses. So they drink 7 of those, which would equal, 7 of those drinks would be like 1.5 of the steakhouse martinis in the 11-ounce glass. So that, evolution, every 2 generations they reinvent the drink. Well, it's been reinvented again. The Fitty Fitty is back. And we have really good vermouth now. There's so many more brands of vermouth in the market than there ever were before. So you change out the vermouth, you change out the gins. There are so many more gin styles. New Western, they call it, where maybe the lavender is a little more apparent than the juniper, or maybe moving into a total different area where the juniper's always got to be there, but maybe it takes a back seat to like cucumber and rose in Hendrick's gin. And there's so much excitement and growth in the spirits category. And so these 2 things are feeding each other. Talented bartenders, enthusiastic purveyors, moving forward with new brands all the time. And that's what the industry is like today. It's stunning in its scope. I mean, there was a golden age in the 1880s, but this is certainly a new golden age, and there's billions of dollars in it. In income, in a lot of levels. And a bartender today can make 6 figures and more, maybe, because there are international corporations that own fine dining hotels and restaurants around the world. You have a corporate beverage manager who understands the kind of drinks you need to make in Japan at a luxury hotel, and the kind of drinks you need to make in Russia at a luxury hotel, the kind of drinks you need to make in South America at a luxury hotel. That guy's valuable. If he knows wines and beer and coffee and soda and tea also, he's extremely valuable. And beer, so beverage specialists are a new category of people that started at the bar and expanded their education, learned about wine, learned about how spirits are made, learned about cocktails, learned about coffee, can be a barista, can do all this stuff. So when they open these luxury, rich people travel and they know what good is. You can't fool them, You can't throw shit out there and expect to get business. You have to be a step ahead. I mean, the thing I said to my bartenders at the Rainbow Room, and this was all beginning, I said, you got to be at least as smart as the guy sitting across the bar from you. Because that guy's reading the New York Times, and Paul Paco has just written a 7-week, full-page, series of articles, infomercials they call them, about how Scotch is made in Ireland. And there are pictures, and this guy's, spreading, barley on the malt floors and digging peat. Paul did it. He went there. He did all the jobs. Customers are reading this, so they're going to go up to the bar and they say, "You got any Islay Scotches?" And you're going to say, "I got Doers." That ain't going to work anymore. This is during the age of the great French restaurants when you had multiple courses and there were cheese courses at the end, and by the time you finished, your mouth was so full of sauce and cheese, and then all you wanted was an adult mint. That's an adult mint. So taste this adult. And it's got to be icy cold, otherwise it'll be cloyed. Oh yeah. Oh wow. So you know what the saying was? If you got as far as the stinger, you were at the bar and it was late at night. And you would say, "So what do we have after a stinger?" "Another stinger." What else?
That is damn good. So
they don't have fancy French restaurants anymore, so nobody's drinking these drinks. Because you don't need this after having, sushi. You don't need this after going to a Tex-Mex or going to a Thai restaurant. This is too much. But you needed it after those fancy French meals. You needed something.
So what's all in this again?
Cognac, White Kingdom on. End of story. Shake it very hard. Served exactly like this over this, so that it continues to pour water into the drink.
Okay.
And that's why it's not cloying, because there's a lot of white cream de mint in here. And they used to call this frappe service. And ladies at the French restaurant at the end of the meal would order a creme de mint frappe, which was just creme de mint poured over crushed ice in a small little glass to sip. Are we done?
Well, we got our last question. So it comes down to a flip of the coin question. So we have our Whiskey Wednesday coin.
Can I open this up?
Yep. You don't have to answer. The coin will tell us the answer. You can flip it, you can spin it, you can do whatever you want, but the coin will tell you the answer. It says fuck yeah on one side, fuck no on the other.
Okay.
So the question is it true that you hate locked ice because you like smaller ice because you like the sound that it makes when it clinks in the glass? Fuck no!
So, the reason it's not true is because I don't like spheres. Because spheres just rotate, they don't make any noise. I want to hear clink. So if you have a big square one, it still makes a clink. I like to turn it around. Like you can't turn a sphere around. It silently rolls. And it also takes up 2 damn minutes. Anyway, I'm done, right?
Yep. Dale, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate your time.
Right, Tim.
Thank you so much.